with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, September 18th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, James Tabery, professor in philosophy at the University of Utah, author of Tyranny of the Gene, Personalized Medicine and Its Threat to Public Health. Also on the program today, U.S. completes a U.S. prisoner for frozen asset swap with Iran. House Republicans in disarray as they launch a feeble attempt to fund the U.S. government. UAW talks resume as U.S. car stocks take a hit. Biden offers full-throated support to the strike, sends administration officials to push talks. Meanwhile, in the other big strike in this country, Drew Barrymore reverses, leaving Bill Maher to be the WGA SAG-AFTRA's biggest scab. Florida Republicans stab Ron DeSantis in the back by rolling back its loyalty pledge for Premier Trump.
I love that.
Hunter Biden sues the IRS for disclosing details of his taxes. Ken Paxton saved from impeachment conviction by Republicans in the Texas State Senate. Planned Parenthood resumes abortion services in Wisconsin. Thousands marched yesterday in a massive climate protest. Russell Brand, accused of rape and sexual abuse by 4 different women, of course, says it's to silence him on Rumble. And lastly, the Alabama Reporter finds Leonard Leo's dark money sources providing the Alabama Republicans who are refusing to abide by the Supreme Court ruling on Section 2 a backdoor channel to Brett Kavanaugh, who may be interested in further sinking that very same landmark legislation. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's another week, and yes, we are all back in studio. It is pretty bulletproof in here for the next couple of weeks in terms of COVID. Bradley, of course, is the weak link, but,
Or the strong link, right?
Or the strong link. I mean, look, this is...
Who knows? Maybe he has superhuman powers.
Emma Vigeland back in studio.
Hi.
We should say that, Bradley, this is like, I don't know if you remember back during the convoy days in the 70s when, there was a big truckers were big in the culture, Smokey and the Bandit, all that type of stuff. But the place you really want it to be on the highway is down a 2-lane highway where you got an 18-wheeler in front of you, an 18-wheeler behind you, and one riding right alongside you. You are completely protected. I'm not quite clear what you were protected from, but that's basically where you're at.
Seems to be rather precarious position, actually.
I actually, that gives me severe anxiety. Nothing makes me more
well,
upset.
I would suggest you watch Smokey and the Bandit, and you'll understand.
I mean,
so scared.
Driving by those 18-wheelers on the highway is not a fun experience, but I guess
That's when you're very safe.
Yeah, but these are all your buds, and you got them on the
Right.
on the CB.
Okay.
So, You're all good there. Anyways,
I still don't know who Bradley is in this situation, but we'll just move
Bradley's
past it.
the Camaro
Oh, okay.
hiding from the cops.
And we're the trucker. We're
And
the
we're
big
the truckers.
18-wheelers.
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect metaphor.
Yeah, it worked.
If you saw the image of it, you'd understand.
All
Okay,
right,
Matt?
just blame the brain fog. That's what I'm
Meanwhile-
going to do when I'm slow.
Exactly.
For the rest of the week.
Meanwhile, just about every piece of equipment we have in the office is acting up.
Including the video computer.
Is that one too now? Something's really weird is happening. So
Oh, no.
are we
We're okay except to play from that.
We're okay.
okay? All right. Well, we'll deal with that later. We'll be able to see it on the we can see it on the what do you call it?
On our monitor, yeah.
Yeah, ping. So bear with us, folks. Today could be a little bit of an adventure. We're still getting our sea legs back. Meanwhile, spoke to David Dayan on Friday. In part, we were talking about the UAW strike. And just before we went on air, Joe Biden spoke at the White House on Friday and addressed the UAW's decision for some of its members to go on strike. Here is that clip now. Are we set to go? We can't. Okay, here we go.
Auto companies have seen record profits, including the last few years, because of the extraordinary skill and sacrifices of the UAW workers. But those record profits have not been shared fairly, in my view, with those workers. Just as the Treasury Department has released a report pointing out that the most comprehensive report ever dealing with how unions are good for both union workers and non-union workers and the overall economy. Unions raise workers' wages, they said, incomes, increase home ownership, increase retirement savings, increase access to critical benefits like sick leave and child care, and reduce inequality, all of which strengthen our economy for all workers. That's because unions raise standards across the workplaces and entire industries, pushing up wages and strengthening benefits for everyone. That's why strong unions are critical to a growing economy and growing it from the middle out, the bottom up, not the top down. That's especially true as we transition to a clean energy future, which we're in the process of doing.
So there you have it. There were reports that Biden had spoke to Fain and was trying to protect some of those EV plants, and that is in some of what may be behind the selected car manufacturers, but we shall see. They were back at the table yesterday. Stocks, the car manufacturers' stocks have dropped, which of course is the most important thing in the world to them. They care about nothing else.
Well, that's how they're. That's how that. Who's the female executive? One of the big three.
Mary.
Yeah. But she was.
Mary Barra.
Yeah, doing a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors about her
Our
compensation.
performance is
it's all
very
in
good
performance,
lately.
aka stock.
Our stock performance, right? Not our necessarily the quality of our cars. Not necessarily. I mean, there's a million other ways in which you could measure the performance of a corporation. In a week or two, we were scheduled to have him on next Monday, but it's Yom Kippur. Bill Lazonic will be on. And if you go back and listen to any of the interviews I've done with Bill Lazonic over the years, he outlines essentially how a combination of the rollback on allowing stock buybacks by the Reagan administration, something that was illegal prior to then just became a practice. The combination of the dropping the capital gains tax, significantly lower wage taxes, and a Clinton era change in the tax code that also made it more beneficial to pay executives through stocks, basically created a misaligned incentive between those people who see the corporation as functioning within the context of a community for the function of the people who work there, as well as the shareholders, to something that is basically just an enterprise, is like a side bet.
It's wild.
It's a cottage industry where the C-suite and the board of directors operate in what's their best interests, and sometimes that aligns with what's in best interest of the corporation, but not necessarily.
We're going to take this profit and instead of, giving it to research and development or our workers, we're going to buy stocks.
Enrich ourselves.
To billions of dollars, driving up our stock price.
It also artificially...
It's crazy.
The secondary part is that it artificially inflates the stock price as well, and that also makes it so that, like, the C-suite, the executives, are even further untethered from, like, the material production of these goods on the floor, because it's just like we're talking about two different ball games at this point. I just also want to point out that Biden saying that, we should note that Sean Fain has still, and the UAW, withheld their endorsement of Biden in 2024, and it's just something to monitor, that they're making clear that they want more from him in exchange for that endorsement. And I think it's a good move.
Yeah, Fain had a statement saying, appreciate the words with regard to, like, record profit should be a record contract, but also, like, make it clear that we've been at the table, and it's been the management that has not been at the table.
Broken promises ever since the crash.
Here's a second clip from Biden.
But I also believe that the contract agreement must lead to a vibrant, made-in-America future that promotes good, strong middle-class jobs that workers can raise a family on, where the UAW remains at the heart of our auto economy, and where the big three companies continue to lead in innovation, excellence, quality, and leadership. Last night, after negotiations broke down, the UAW announced a targeted strike at a few big three auto plants. Let's be clear. No one wants a strike. Say it again. No one wants a strike. But I respect workers' right to use their options under the collective bargaining system. And I understand the workers' frustration. Over generations, auto workers sacrificed so much to keep the industry alive and strong, especially through the economic crisis and the pandemic. Workers deserve a fair share of the benefits they helped create for an enterprise. I do appreciate that the parties have been working around the clock. And when I first called them at the very first day of their negotiations, I said, please stay at the table as long as you can to try to work this out. And they've been around the clock, and the companies have made some significant offers. But I believe they should go further to ensure record corporate profits mean record contracts for the UAW. Let me say that again. Record corporate profits, which they have, should be shared by record contracts for the UAW.
Good stuff. International Socialist says, or I should say, custodial artist on the IM says, how much do you think, if anything, Biden learned from the backlash on the rail strike? I think there was some of that. But the rail strike, fundamentally different sort of calculation because of the statutory involvement of the United States with railway workers and with some flights too, I think, in terms of aviation. So it's a different ball game, but nevertheless, look, I don't know how you break down the percentage, but in terms of workers, there's obviously a lot more workers who are going to be touched by this UAW strike than railways. That said, obviously the transportation of the railways also has to do with basically the safety of a countless number of communities around the country, and those those business practices are just horrible. But there is no doubt that this administration is the best on labor that we've had. I mean, more or less in my lifetime. Yeah. Certainly better than the Clinton administration, certainly better than the Obama administration. Those aren't necessarily the highest bars, but it's better than those two, and by far, obviously, better than Reagan, who essentially ushered in this. I mean, Jimmy Carter had some issues with unions as well. He was not terribly a friend of unions. But Ronald Reagan really ushered in this era in firing the air traffic controllers. And that's where we've been. And this is a turnaround. It is, We have talked to numerous labor leaders, from the Amazon strikes to the, Starbucks, and it makes a difference when the president comes out and is supportive. It makes a difference because just in terms of maintaining the solidarity of the union and the people are on the picket line. So it's helpful, and that's all you need. But first, let me just issue a couple of corrections. I apologize. It was not a Camaro, but it was, of course, a Trans Am in Smokey and the Bandit. I apologize, and on record for making that mistake. Ad hominem also says, I'm disappointed but not surprised that Sam is the plot of Smokey and the Bandit backwards. The Camaro, which in fact was a Trans Am, distracted the cops from the bootlegging Coors truck. Yes, that's true. And lastly, I should also just say that is called being in the rocking chair. That spot where the Camaro, the Trans Am, is surrounded by the three trucks.
Well, this metaphor just keeps getting better and better.
Yep. So apologies, folks. We stand corrected. In a moment, we'll be talking to James Tabery. He is a professor in philosophy at the University of Utah, author of Tyranny of the Gene, Personalized Medicine and Its Threat to Public Health. But first, a couple of words from our sponsors. Welcome back, Emma, to your favorite ad.
Oh, yeah.
Look, folks, during the pandemic, when there was a crunch on toilet paper, we were approached by a what do you call it? A bidet company.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, yes, please. I'd used the bidet before, but I was a little bit like, I couldn't remember. Like, I sort of remembered it. I wasn't. Once you have been involved with a bidet in some fashion, you realize that it's like a brave new. I want to say it's a brave new world, but it's actually not. That's not new. It's not new at all. It's been around for a long time, and it's the most obvious thing ever.
Yeah.
When you clean your hands are dirty. You don't use a dry piece of paper. No, you use water, and that is what makes Hello Tushy so much such a much better experience. Not to mention, you save a ton of money on toilet paper.
Yeah.
Honestly. And room in your apartment or house, I guess. Hello Tushy has over 100,000 5-star reviews. You can see why millions of real pooping humans already love Hello Tushy Bidet. Every Hello Tushy Bidet attachment comes with a 30-day risk-free guarantee and a 12-month warranty. Look, here's the bottom line, though. Like, you could spend $4,000 on some of these very fancy bidet toilets. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is spurting water up. And if you know how to change a toilet seat, you can put this Hello Tushy Bidet attachment onto your toilet seat, onto your toilet in about 15 minutes. Hello Tushy Bidet, like I say, cleans your bum with a fresh stream of water. It is 2 times better than wiping, I should say. It attaches to your existing toilet. There is no electricity or additional plumbing necessary. With the savings you have on toilet paper, it pays for itself in a year. And again, 30-day money-back guarantee, 12-month warranty. Stop wiping, start washing. Go to hellotushy.com/majority. Use the promo code majority for 10% off your first order. That's hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. Also, another product I'm enjoying using for, basically ever since I started with the beard. I was like, I'm not using the subscription service anymore. Don't need that. I don't want to go out and buy disposables because who wants to be involved with all that plastic? One of our sponsors today, Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer from Canada. They made parts from the International Space Station and Mars rover, and now they're bringing their precision engineering to your razor. It turns out that the reason why disposable razors are a bad shave is not because the blade's not sharp enough. Apparently, it's fairly easy to get a sharp metal blade. It is the distance between the razor and how far off the blade goes from it, because then it gets too flexible. They use computer numerical control devices. I remember what CNC machines mean now.
There you go.
And they make metal razors that extend just 0.0013. Maybe there's 3 zeros. I can't remember. But it's less than the thickness of a human hair. And it means you have a secure and stable blade and a vibration-free shave, which means you get a great shave. Plus, it's got like these little channels underneath here to evacuate your hair, and cream makes it much easier. No scraping your hair out with your thumb or banging it on the sink. And the thing about the Henson shavers, and I think it's because they're Canadian, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I
can't believe how good of a deal this is.
They want to be the best razor, but not necessarily the best razor business. And by that, I mean no subscription service, no obsolescence. They use essentially the open source, old style dual edge blades that you can get anywhere. There are no proprietary blades. And here's the deal. You buy this, and once you buy this razor, it's going to cost you $3 to $5 a year to maintain your shaving. And this is a razor. It's heavyweight. It's a beautiful razor. I got another one, a black one at home. And once you own this razor, you're basically done. And on top of that, they're giving our audience a 2-year supply of blades for free. Just go to hensonshaving.com/majority. That's Henson, HENSON, shaving.com/majority. Add a razor, and then you got to actually put into the shopping cart another 100 pack of blades, and then enter the code majority. You get the blades for free. Link is in the description. I do this right here. Shave right there, and sometimes on my neck. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even use shaving cream anymore.
Wow.
I don't need to. Lastly, another product that has actually sort of semi-revolutionized my life. I have simplified my closet now, cutting down to just basically like my dress shirts are all now Roan shirts. I've been wearing the Roan commuter collection pants now, particularly in the summer. They're nice and lightweight, and they are breathable, flexible. They have a 4-way stretch. I don't know what that means, but they're stretchy. And the thing is, the commuter collection, not only is it super comfortable, not only do they need virtually no ironing whatsoever. They have, dress shirts and quarter zips and polos and pants, but and they don't smell and this and that. But they look like full-on dress clothes.
Yeah.
But they feel like the most comfortable clothes you've ever worn. Like I say, Roan's got wrinkle release technology. The wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. They have gold fusion, the anti-odor technology. You'll be smelling fresh and clean all day. You can go a couple of days. Sometimes you're going to wash your shirt every time you use it. You don't have to. But honestly, the most comfortable, the most mobile feeling, freshest clothes I got. The commuter collection gets you through any workday, straight into whatever comes in next. Head to roan.com/majority report. Use the promo code majority report. Save 20% off your whole order. That's 20% off your order when you go to Roan, RHONE.com/majority report. Use the code majority report. It is time to find your comfortable corner office. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, James Tabery, professor in philosophy at the University of Utah, author of The Tyranny of the Gene, Personalized Medicine and Its Threat to Public Health. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Joining us now, Jim Tabery. He is Tabery, professor of philosophy at the University of Utah, author of Tyranny of the Gene, Personalized Medicine and Its Threat to Public Health. Jim, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So let's just start, because you're a philosophy professor. What you write about this in your book, but what was the entry into this world and this sort of you outline essentially two competing strains of thought in a way of approaching health in this country that took place over the past, I guess, decade. Just tell us how you got to that point of looking into that.
Sure. I first came across this thing that was being called personalized or precision medicine in 2015. That's when then President Barack Obama announced in his State of the Union address this plan for what came to be called the Precision Medicine Initiative, or now it's called the All of Us Research Program. And it was this vision to enroll 1 million or more Americans from across the United States in a long-term health study to jumpstart precision medicine. And it got a lot of attention because of the scale. It was a presidential initiative. It was going to cost billions of dollars. When I started looking at what the excitement was about this thing, the sort of advocates routinely pointed to a drug called Tarceva as a treatment for lung cancer, as an example of a success that then could be replicated and spread throughout medicine. And just several years earlier, my father had been diagnosed with lung cancer and been given Tarceva. And we can sort of go down this road as far as you want to go, but for now, suffice to say, it led me to be skeptical.
Let's go down that road. I mean, I was going to talk about Gleevec, and maybe we can get to that a little bit later. But yeah, what was it that make you skeptical about the Tarceva?
So my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2011. It turned out when they did a biopsy of his tumor, it was clear that there was a molecular marker on it that suggested he was a good candidate for this drug called Tarceva. And essentially what Tarceva does is it prevents the tumors from multiplying, from continuing to grow. When my dad was first diagnosed with Tarceva, diagnosed with lung cancer, you do what anybody does. You go to the internet and start doom scrolling to get a sense of kind of the scale of the nightmare. And at the time, it said that somebody with stage 4 lung cancer, so this was cancer that had metastasized all through his body, you had about 8 months to live. So this was a real shock. He was put on this drug. We were told that it was really unique that this drug was available, that it only worked with patients at his particular molecular marker. He ended up living for about 13 months, so he died a little over a year later. I think there's every reason to think that the drug probably allowed him to live a little bit longer. And those were months that we really cherish and I look back on fondly. But it wasn't a cure. It was extremely expensive. It's the kind of thing that's not available to all patients. And in the end, what it did is just sort of, prolonged his terminal disease for a little bit. And so when I sort of was scaling out from that, and the talk was, this is kind of the revolution that we're going to bring across healthcare, it made me skeptical. Not because I don't think we want more time with family at the end of their lives, but the lesson for me was I would much rather have not had my dad have lung cancer, not have him spend thousands of dollars a month on a drug that just gives him a little bit of time at the very end.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what this story is about. So tell us about the two, these two sort of competing studies at the NIH.
Yeah. The way to kind of understand this is, at the end of the 20th century, 25 years ago, there was widespread agreement that healthcare in the United States was due for a revolution. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing. We've got all sorts of health conditions that begin in childhood, but then lead to long-term health problems. I think of sort of obesity, diabetes, asthma, that then leads to hypertension, heart disease, chronic emphysema. So sort of everybody agreed there was a problem. The question was what to do about it. And that's where there was a bit of a dispute. Many people coming out of the Human Genome Project, which is wrapping up in the end of the 20th century, thought the solution to all this was what was at the time called personalized medicine. So, we get Sam, your genome, or Emma, your genome, my genome. Maybe we all have diabetes, but each of us is going to get a different treatment because each of our genomes are different, and that's going to dictate what kind of particular treatment we need. And so that was what was being marketed as personalized medicine. And when the Human Genome Project wrapped up, the head of that, Francis Collins, was looking ahead to essentially launching a nationwide study that could make personalized medicine a reality. And so that's sort of one arm of what you were just referencing. At the same time, coming out of the environmental health and pediatric communities was this realization that, yes, we need a revolution in healthcare, but it's not about tailoring treatments to our genes. It's about making the environments that we all move through, starting when we're in the womb, safer. Because many of the sort of causes of these diseases that then lead to these long-term health problems are the results of things in our physical, social, biological environments. And so at the very same time, there was this effort coming out of a different institute at the National Institutes of Health, the Child Health Institute, for something called the National Children's Study. And that was going to be this nationwide study of 100,000 children from across the country, in many cases tracked even before they were born, all the way until they were adults, where the whole time they were going to be collecting all this really detailed information about their home environments, their family environments, their neighborhood and school environments, and then looking at how those contributions lead to different outcomes in health later on. And so what ends up happening is there's this sort of competition that unfolds at the NIH, basically between the efforts to make personalized medicine a reality and the efforts to make this environmental health focus a reality. And what I try to argue in the book is that was a lens through which we can see this happening on a global scale across the United States, and personalized medicine is winning.
Well, it feels like the difference between, preventative medicine and like boutique kind of personalization, which is for the most part, without any kind of socialized medicine broadly in this country, it just feels like it's only going to exacerbate class differences in terms of health outcomes versus let's just invest this money instead of making it super personal into broad-based help for people like the nearly 30 million people uninsured in this country, for example.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Emma. The drugs that are the products of these personalized medicine approaches are typically exorbitantly expensive. The drug that my father was on cost about $5,000 a month. And that is at the kind of affordable end of this spectrum. You can find drugs for other rare diseases that are in the millions of dollars. And as you said, Emma, this is not a recipe for equity. This is not a recipe for battling racial health disparities. This is not a recipe for trying to extend healthcare to people who need it most. What we're sort of, I think that the road we're on is one where, we're getting sort of smaller and smaller patient populations that are having treatments developed for them that are just necessarily going to be extremely expensive because the private companies that produce them are going to want to get their profits back.
It really feels to me like there's three sort of like, I guess, major themes that are brought out by your book. That one is like, how do we define healthcare in terms of like who we're providing it to, which you just touched on in terms of the money, and the other is the sort of the broader question of what the incentive structure is for healthcare providers writ large. And in between is sort of like how the bureaucratic apparatus it can get either captured by just pure dollars or just simply like, I'm a hammer, everything's a nail type of situation. Let's talk about that one with Francis Collins, because it really does feel like this guy is like I'm into genes, and I don't know what he's doing right now in terms of making his money, but I can almost guarantee myself that it has to do with monetizing this type of stuff on top of maybe other work he's doing. But that is a real problem in terms of like how our government approaches health.
Yeah. So Francis Collins is probably the main character in the book. Most of your watchers and listeners are going to be familiar with. He was the sort of the figurehead of the Human Genome Project. He famously rode a chopper to the lab every morning and happily posed for pictures. He would play his guitar in front of large audiences. He was a kind of larger than life personality. And I think what we should say is he was a true believer in the transformational power of genetics. He genuinely thought if we can get genetic information from patients, that's going to be the key that unlocks all these problems that are facing the healthcare generally in the country. He was head of the National Human Genome Research Institute that oversaw this. In 2009, he sort of bumps up and then becomes director of the whole National Institutes of Health. That's when the precision medicine initiative that President Obama gets behind is brought to him and then becomes a reality. He's actually, he just stepped down from being the head of the NIH a year or so ago, and he's back at the Genome Institute looking for genes associated with type 2 diabetes. So I think what you would say about Dr. Collins is, it is not the desire to monetize genetics that drives him. It is the true belief that genes are sort of what are behind bad health outcomes, and if we could get that information, we could make everybody healthier. And I just think now that we've got sort of of the Human Genome Project, there's plenty of reason now to think that grand aspiration is not a reality.
All right, so let's talk about it from the provider side. There is obviously a huge sort of incentive to create drugs that will extend life for X number of months or years at an enormous cost, because of course that's, people are going to part with their money at that point. I mean, how much of that sort of, there has to be like a machine that is associated with like, this is my primary objective to make these drugs that are also sort of like helping along. I mean, certainly I'm not, I find it hard to believe that he's not sitting on a couple of boards somewhere, but be that as it may, I don't think like this is all just about his, Collins enriching himself at all. But the fact is, just because he's super passionate about this doesn't mean that it's the best answer for our society. And it makes him a linchpin for moneyed interests to drive this.
Yeah, essentially what I open with in the book is pointing out that there's a kind of paradox. On the one hand, there were all these promises coming out of the Human Genome Project that, we're going to find the genes for any condition that you can imagine, right? Cancers, heart disease, diabetes, autism, asthma. And then, we'll be able to develop the drugs because now we know what the cause of them are. As time has gone on, it's just become increasingly clear that it's not just that it hasn't happened, it's not going to happen. The more we learn about the genome, the more it becomes clear it is so complex. And the health conditions that are having the greatest impact on the most people are the products of dozens, hundreds, in some cases even thousands of regions in the genome. And that doesn't even count for all the environmental contributions. And so the kind of ability to latch on to the cause and then sort of like a light switch, turn it on or off, isn't available. The paradox, though, is despite that reality, there is this huge kind of genetic swerve unfolding in healthcare where people are getting more and more excited about it. You, Sam, were talking about the kind of financial aspect. That's right. What pharmaceutical companies have realized is you can charge tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even $1 million or more for a drug, and there will be demand for it. And if there's enough of a push, there can be the demand to actually pay for it. And so they can get their monies back by charging these really, really high prices. That's one thing. But, I think it's worth being mindful of the other things that are at play too. In our highly polarized political climate, the environment, research on the environment, considerations of environmental contributions to health are also highly polarized. They are politicized exercises. In contrast, genomic medicine is one of these few places where people across the political spectrum can agree they want to see more of it. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, saying that you're going to fight and find the cure for cancer and save kids really resonates. And so it's also got that sort of political benefit to it. And then there's also, just the media side of it. As Emma was talking about before, there's so much bang for your buck that you can get out of investing in preventative medicine and public health, but it is really hard to motivate that, right? What genomic medicine has going for it is you can bring out the survivor. You can bring out the child that gets the drug that was developed just for them and talk about, look, right, Sarah's alive now because of this thing and she wouldn't have been alive in the past. You don't mention anything about how much the drug costs, but you can put a face to it, right? And public health is harder to do that way because prevention, it's harder to sort of show, look what you did with prevention. Really what you're doing is making it safer for people down the line. And so it's harder to market. It's harder to give it a title, on the newspaper. It just doesn't package as easily.
Well, also prevention is not going to be beneficial to anybody in like the C-suite at some of these pharmaceutical companies, or for investors. They can't come out with some sort of slide deck showing how preventative medicine and investment in this, or looking at health more holistically, including environmental factors, which might threaten some other like industries as well. They can't make that case to anybody that's going to invest money in their company.
Yeah. So it's on the one hand, you got like the opportunity for real profit. And then on the other hand, if we're talking about the environmental contributions to health, by and large, what you're encountering is a tension with private industry, because in many cases, it's private industry that's producing the things that are
100%. I mean, it's not only is there an absence of an incentive structure to promote the counterfactual. Like, here are these 10 people, and 3 of them wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for these changes that we made. But for every single environmental improvement we make, it hurts the corporate bottom line of somewhere. And as you were talking about, like, we have this bipartisan support for the genome. I would be surprised if we didn't also have support from the petroleum industry or from Altria to basically say, like, this is the solution. We figured out how to fix what we have in some ways made worse by our other business practices. So what, I mean, I want to circle back to this because I think ultimately this is this is the meat of the matter on some level. But I want to talk about the just huge missed opportunity about that study of children. Because I mean, where is that data? Is there any way to revive that? That to me seems like the amount of cross-section of like multidisciplinary solutions that could have come out of a data set like that. Environmental, social, I mean, all sorts of different things. I would have been a help with education. It would have been a help with, I mean, it just seems to me that like that would have been, it's such a missed opportunity.
It is. And there's this weird way in which there's a kind of parallel universe playing out where we can, in some sense, see what the benefits could have been. And it's this. After the National Children's Study was while it was getting formed, Japan was interested in setting up one of its own. And so created something called the Japan Environment Children Study, JECS. It is still going to this day. So they now have about a decade's worth of information on. It was very much modeled on the National Children's Study, about 100,000 kids, very much focused on the environment. And you can just see this constant stream of scientific publications coming out from that data, looking at all sorts of stuff. I mean, I just poked my head into it the other day, looking at sort of risks of respiratory illness to children, depending on whether or not they were, spending early months of their life in a house where a renovation was happening, right? Where it's the kind of thing where once you think about it, you can be like, oh yeah, I can see how this would play out. But now they've got the data, right? And in the United States, we were never able to get that. They started trying to recruit in 2009. And that was essentially right when the initial leadership of it was removed, and then new leadership was put in control of it. And that new leadership, this was now all happening while Professor Collins was the head of the National Institutes of Health. They really tried at that point shifting it into making it more about genetics. And in that process of trying to kind of, as you said, Sam, like have your hammer and turn the National Children's Study into a personalized medicine nail, it just sort of imploded. And so it was shut down literally just a month or so before President Obama ends up announcing that precision medicine initiative.
So there's no reviving that one. It's basically, if you were ever to engage in something, I mean, it's sort of shocking to me that we don't have that ongoing already, to be honest.
Many countries do, yeah. I mentioned Japan just because it was so directly inspired by the effort that was done in the United States. And to be clear, I mean, it's not like there isn't research on children's health occurring, and even the environmental contributions to children's health. But it is not happening at the scale, with the systematic nature, with the longitudinal quality that was being envisioned with the National Children's Study. And so what you have now are sort of lots of little pockets of smaller studies looking at different things, but it's very hard to sort of pull that data together in one big sort of pot and then make larger inferences from it. And so that ship had sailed. I think there are those out there who would like to see something like it come back, but it's going to take political will, and it's going to take the investment of people that see the value of that.
How many? Do you know how many children would have been involved in that study?
The target was 100,000, and they were going to be recruited at about 100 sites across the United States. So, me personally, part of the way I made my way into this world was I live in Salt Lake City. I'm at the University of Utah, and the pediatric department here was tasked with overseeing one of the earliest recruitment sites, which was going to take place in Salt Lake County. And so, my personal story was I hear about this, precision medicine initiative from President Obama. I think this sounds really interesting. I want to kind of go learn a little bit more about it. While I'm at the Genome Institute, I'm given access to these documents, sort of like Dr. Collins's emails, PowerPoints, notes that he's keeping when he's envisioning this thing that's going to become the Precision Medicine Initiative. And my initial thought is, hey, this could be really interesting to sort of tell this story of how we got from Human Genome Project to Precision Medicine Initiative. When I got back to Utah and started talking about that, people very quickly said, you need to go talk to Ed Clark, head of pediatrics, because he was one of the people that was sort of instrumentally involved in this National Children's Study. And Ed was the first one that said, there's a story here, we need to sit down and talk about it. And so he's the one that kind of starts introducing me to this world of this tension that existed at that agency between the efforts like him and people across the country to make the National Children's Study a reality, and what was happening in the Genome Institute to give us personalized medicine.
Let's just pivot back to sort of like the broader question. I mean, is it, at the end of the day, isn't this type of like this, the fact that, I mean, this story about largely about having a medicine as a commodity. I mean, it seems like it's conceivable that genetics are going to be able to provide. It seems like it's conceivable that genetics are going to be able to provide like some solutions to medicine. But
Right.
it seems also so obvious that there, things like the idea of lead and mercury in the air and the implications that we've seen, at least, there's a lot of data to support that crime went down significantly 20 years wherever lead gasoline was outlawed. Crime goes down significantly 20 years later. I mean, down to there's always variances, but I mean, down to such an enormous drop. I mean, isn't this ultimately about the idea of whether there is not ever going to be a situation where we don't replay this type of dynamic in a system where medicine is commodified?
Yeah, it reminds me of when you said earlier, sort of what are the kind of three things at the heart of this story, and the first one was how we think about health. One way of thinking about health is health and health care are the things that you think about when some sort of crisis happens, and then you go to the hospital to get something from the healthcare providers. And for a range of things, right? I mean, cancers, if you need a bone set, there's lots of things, right, where something happens and then you go to the doctor and they have the tools to help you. I think to the extent that we're going to find medical genetics get purchased, it's in that domain. It's when sort of you realize a crisis is happening and then you're looking for, in some cases, maybe there's a situation where there is some sort of genetic cause that you can get purchase on. But a different way of thinking about health is, right, I mean, it's the stuff that we encounter every day. It's the air we breathe. It's, the workplace stress. It's whether or not you have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. It's, can you pay your bills without, getting anxiety? It's clear that, so much goes into making us healthy or ill before we ever walk through that sliding glass door into the hospital. And I think for those that are interested in preventative health and environmental health, it's being mindful of all those factors that impact whether or not we're healthy or ill or well. And that's the place where you see this personalized medicine. It's harder to commodify that. It's much more about collective action, and it's less about sort of having some expensive pill to treat you after you're sick.
But I'm even talking like upstream from that question, right? Because because it's very good. I mean, again, it's possible that maybe that gene therapy or a medicine derived from an understanding of the genome is more effective than the preventative stuff. I doubt it, but it's possible. But we can't really even make that assessment in a way that just judges the sort of like the reality of that, because of our system is structured to incentivize the answer that's always going to provide the most amount of money to those people who are engaged in that process.
Yes. When you look at the history of how health research in the United States and the funding of it has changed over time, going back at the end of World War II, there was huge investment from the federal government in health research. And that was part of the Cold War dynamic. The thought was, we're going to lead this charge by having heavy federal government investment in health research. And what's happened is, as time has gone on, that federal investment percentage has gone down and private investment has gone up. So, back, if you rewind 60, 70 years ago, about half of all federal research in the United States was the result of federal investment. Now it's down to about a quarter, and 75% of it is impacted by private industry. And as you said, Sam, when that's the dynamic, right, it's not that the people that are invested in this aren't interested in promoting health, but they're interested in promoting the kind of health that makes money. And that really does sort of skew things to make sure that you're focusing on certain diseases, certain populations, certain outcomes, and certain timelines, right? It's less about kind of large scale, how do we help the most people? How do we help the people who are in greatest need? And more about how do we make money off of delivering something that we can say will increase health.
I'm curious over the course of the process of the book and of like talking to different people in the context of researching it. Did you find that dynamic that people's sort of like up front and close experience with that changed their perspective on whether we should have a more socialized medicine system?
I don't know if I can go that far, in part because most people only know what they know, right? And so, part of what I was trying to do in the book was show how there are all these sort of forces at play, technological forces, financial forces, political forces, media dynamics that are making one side of this coin look far more attractive than I think it should. But this is a story that in the book that plays out in the United States, and most of the people I'm talking to, they can tell something's wrong, but the idea that there might be a solution to it, I think, is still hard to grasp, right? I mean, so you can say, like, I really need this drug to survive. It is so expensive that I'm making decisions about whether or not I'm going to keep paying for the drug and then leave my family in financial ruin after I'm gone, or not take the drug and then die sooner. It's clear that's wrong. But what to do to get out of that situation, I think, is harder for people to fully appreciate. And it's because so much of this has just become the norm. I think, right now, there's an effort to allow Medicare to negotiate with drug companies on just a handful of drugs. The U.S. is so far behind all other high-income nations in being able to navigate something like delivering affordable pharmaceuticals to our population. And yet there is this huge pushback against it because in the United States, at least, right, the norm is you just let the drug companies decide what they're going to charge, and that's the end of it. And so, we've got a long way to go, I think, before we can get to a place where people can sort of see, oh yeah, there's another way to go about doing this.
Jim, can I just ask if you can harken back to something you mentioned earlier about the racial health gap and how maybe a focus on this kind of personalized gene medicine approach is counterproductive because, like, for example, something like sickle cell, we should be looking into the origins of like why there's more of a tendency in certain groups for sickle cell to be passed down. There have been theories about malaria and things like that, but it's often kind of reduced to racial differences as opposed to a more holistic examination of health and the circumstances that led to that. And like, that's just one example. If you don't mind expanding on that.
Yeah, and I think the clearest way that I think most people will be familiar with is just think about what COVID exposed for the last several years, right? At the beginning of the pandemic, communities of color across the country were getting hit far harder than white communities, right? More deadly, getting infected at higher rates. When they're getting infected, they're having poor health outcomes. That was not because people of color have different genomes than white people. It's because of how our society is structured, right? It's about sort of, do you work and live in places where you could conceivably kind of, quarantine yourself? Is your job such that you could move online and not put yourself at risk? Or do you only make income if you're going into somewhere where you're going to have to interact with other humans? Do you have access to quality health care? Can you get treatment early when you need it, or do you have to sort of wait until it's a crisis and then you go to the emergency room, right? And what the pandemic exposed is these resources are distributed completely unequally in the United States. That's just about the pandemic. But when you look across the board for all sorts of health outcomes, cancers, heart conditions, stroke, dementia, communities of color have far higher burdens of those things than white communities. There are people out there looking for the genes that will explain that, right? And then and I think we should be clear here because it's easy to kind of, I think, demonize and imagine sort of like this is all just kind of people looking for money. But in many, like, there are people that think I want to help those people and I'm going to find the genes for it, and then we're going to be able to target and they're going to get their own special drug that's going to sort of solve that problem. But the problem is we've got all decades of research that show these are not differences inside our body; they're differences outside our body. And so I think the worry is it's distracting from where we should really be looking for the causes of these problems. And if we really want to fix them, we need to be honest with ourselves and society about where we need to be investing those research resources.
Jim Tabery, professor of philosophy at the University of Utah, author of Tyranny of the Gene, Personalized Medicine and Its Threat to Public Health. We'll put a link to that book at the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Thanks so much for your time today. Really interesting.
Sam and Emma, it was great talking with you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. Head into the fun half of the program, wherein we will take your phone calls, read your IMs, and look at some clips from the news.
Very fun.
Yes. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free half free of commercials, you get the fun half, and you get a little bonus, like you can IM the show through the app at majorityapp.com. The app, of course, is free for everybody, but it has a little more functionality if you've signed in as a member. And you support a show that you may listen to on a regular basis. Sometimes you don't want to see an interview about this, or sometimes you want to see an interview about that, but then at other times there's interview about that other thing. That's what it's about. Also, don't forget the AM Quickie 3 times a week for free. amquickie.com. You get 5 days a week if you sign up for a small subscription fee. Check it out. Emma, here, before you tell us what happened on ESPN last week and what's happening this week, I will say this right now. Sleeper bet of the year, the Patriots.
Well, I'm like upset on your behalf, I guess, or for Patriots fans. My sister's a Patriots fan, so I follow them a little bit, and they are really talented on defense, and their game plan is always correct. But Bill Belichick can't draft or scout receivers. Your receiver room might be the worst in the NFL, but that's just it's just doing the team a disservice.
But this team is I was saying this to Bradley. They're 5% away. They're 5% away, and 5% is going to make a big difference. They always have the right
game plan, but they just don't have the Jimmies and the Joes. It's like Bill just overvalues the guys that can mentally process what he wants to get done. But that's an outdated philosophy in the NFL right now. You need athletic guys if you want to run with Tyreek Hill. But we'll talk about that on ESPN today. I'm sorry about
the Jimmies and the Joes. Is that a New Jersey thing?
Well, I've heard it on a podcast I listen to all the time. But football guys will say that, it's not just the X's and O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes, and the Jimmies and the Joes are supposed to be more talented. Okay, well, whatever. It's
people whose names are Jimmy and Joe. Or
football podcasts say that, right, Bradley? Is that just what's sept into mind?
It's basically just you need more guys.
Right. You need more talent, as opposed the Bill's always going to be right on the X's and O's. I mean, he's very good at that. But it's the problem is that you guys you're not talented on offense at all.
Why not
except
the Billies
for
and the Bows?
Stevenson? Because Bo is not that common of a name.
Well, isn't that the whole point? You need extraordinary
it does have the
players.
X in there.
Yeah.
If you need B-A-U-X.
You need extraordinary.
Right. Well, we'll be talking
Billies
about
and the
these
Bows.
incredible questions and more on ESPN today. I mean, the Giants' biggest comeback since the 40s.
The Xanders and the Zoes.
That too.
That's X.
Yeah. Anyway. Sure. So yeah, check us out today. We're back on our schedule. Poor Bradley's going to be a little upset, but that's okay.
Oh, because
yeah,
his team lost.
Yeah. Poor
Matt,
guys.
what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Oh yeah, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. David and I talked about the UAW stand-up strike, including the CIA. What's her name? The CIA representative from Michigan.
Stefanik.
Stefanik, yeah. Was that her?
No.
Slotkin.
Slotkin, yeah.
Damn it.
Saying, let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And how about let's not let CIA agents be representatives? And also the J.D. Vance, Josh Hawley way that they're wading into the union with the strike is that they support workers' wages. They don't say the word unions, but they support workers getting pay raises. But it's the damn government that is doing all this woke climate stuff. And if they would just get the government out of there, then the bosses and the workers could come together for these high wages. So we talked about that. Patreon.com, so Left Reckoning.
Folks, see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Cedar! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See, white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Cedar, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Sam Wise, howdy, MR crew, longtime listener and member here. Can I get a shofar for my recent engagement to my partner of 4+ years? We're both big fans. Thank you for all the hard work you do, bringing quality content to the masses. Happy engagement. Iowa Ryan, that Naomi Klein book looks amazing. Will you have her on? Yes. In fact, she was supposed to be on today, but we had to, but she had some conflict, and yes, we'll definitely have her on. Can I get a shofar for my wife, Rachel? It's her 31st birthday. She's an amazing woman and fantastic mother. I look forward to spending the rest of our lives together, says Silent Nate. There you go. Wow. Tomuff Link, happy Fun Day Monday. Glad everyone's feeling better. Trigger warning, in 2008, Brand was fired by the BBC after, while on air during his radio show, He and his co-host